Welcome to Uncensored Conservatism. This is episode 197. Here we go. We hear these words, disinformation and misinformation, a lot these days being thrown around. Now, this graph vividly shows how our betters in the world of journalism and the media have used the word over the years, and it seems it really took off in 2016, 2017. Gee, what happened then? That's right. This guy on the left be she who would be queen, the Lady Dowager of Chappaqua, Hillary Clinton. Anyway, so I was reading this thread on social media one night that was reposted by a liberal friend of mine about the Kennedy assassination. Of course, it was a coup orchestrated by the CIA. Maybe it was, who knows, but that's not the point. The reason for the action was Kennedy wanted to end the Federal Reserve and go back on the gold standard, to which a light bulb went off in my head. Wait a minute. In 1963, we were on the gold standard. This guy took us off the gold standard in like 1972 or 1973. I mean, did the CIA kill the wrong guy? Anyway, it shows the idiocy of this use of disinformation to drive a narrative. So I thought of the top 25 most recent pieces of actual disinformation, starting with an under-the-radar story regarding the war in Ukraine. Okay, yes, Putin, he's a bad guy. He's a bully, and he invaded a sovereign nation, Ukraine. Europe and the United States reacted by backing Ukraine with enormous sums of aid and military equipment. So in November 2022, a missile struck a Polish village, whose name I can't pronounce, and killed 2 people. Those damn Russians, they can't even aim a missile correctly. And Poland is a NATO country, by the way. Ukraine blamed Russia. Everybody fell for it. Except a year later, we learned the missile was an errant Ukrainian missile. So it was easy to sit here in the United States and wave our little Ukrainian flags and blame Russia. But give yourself a point for believing it was a Russian missile without knowing the facts. Number 24. All right. There's this dude named Bubba Wallace, and he's a rarity in the world of NASCAR racing. He's black. And in July 2020, he was so rare that he was NASCAR's only black driver and was at the famed Talladega Speedway when there appeared a noose in the garage that housed his car. The press went crazy with stories of the hate crime, hanging a noose in the garage of the only black NASCAR race car driver at a speedway in the heart of that racist South. Except after an investigation, it was determined the so-called noose was a loop on a rope used to pull down the garage door. So give yourself 3 points if you fell for the initial noose explanation, because then you might just be race obsessed. At number 23, remember COVID? I do. The 6 days, 6 feet of between each other, mandatory masks, and shutting down everything to flatten the curve. Now, one of the treatments suggested was the use of something called ivermectin. Ivermectin was developed in 1975 and is a class of drugs known as antiparasitics because they kill parasites. Now, it is true that it was initially used to prevent and kill heartworm in horses. Then someone suggested that it could be used to treat COVID. Not so fast, said the media and our government overlords. It's a horse pill used to treat horses. However, 2 years later, in 2022, as COVID was becoming a bad memory, the National Institutes of Health said, well, it might help with COVID or it might not help with COVID. We just don't know. We need more studies. All we know is that it doesn't hurt with bad side effects if you do use it. So give yourself a point if you fell for the ivermectin is a horse tranquilizer shtick. Next up, moving on at number 22, inflation. What caused it? Well, besides the policies of this guy. If you believe the cause of inflation was this guy's actions in Ukraine, which was a White House line at the time, give yourself a point because we have minimal trade with either Russia or Ukraine. At number 21, masks prevent the spread of COVID. That's worth 2 points if you believe that shit. Yeah, people were threatened with arrest if they didn't wear one in public in the open air. Today, some people wear the damn things while driving alone in a car. And that was kind of funny to watch, as if COVID is coming through the heater or air conditioner of your car. Today, even the CDC and the NIH said wearing a mask had no effect on stopping the spread of COVID because it was a frickin' virus and they can get through cloth quite easily. Next up, Trump. Give yourself a point if you believe that Trump ordered police to use tear gas so that he could stage a photo op. This was in response to a riot near the White House where an historic church was set ablaze. It was later revealed that police cleared Lafayette Square in 2020 so that a contractor could install a security fencing in the area, not because Trump decided to survey the damage personally. This may be trivial, but it's worth a point. At 19, Trump's tax cuts only benefited the rich. I think this graph illustrates the falsity of that claim. But if you believed it, it's worth 2 points because then you're in the company of these people, and that's pretty sad. Number 18, the Covington High School kids, right. The infamous confrontation between Nicholas Sandman, a Catholic high school kid, and Nathan Phillips, some Indian at the Lincoln Memorial. The media and politicians were all up in arms, and a smiling Sandman face to face with the Indian became a symbol of smug white privilege, except it seems that some black Israelite group was doing the actual taunting and that Sandman was totally innocent of everything he was accused of. He was so innocent, he won an undisclosed amount of cash in a defamation suit against CNN and NBC. But if you initially believe Sandman was a racist, then you've got to give yourself 2 points. Number 17, Trump and injecting bleach. He never said that. He talked about killing COVID on counters and such with bleach and using ultraviolet light. He suggested to officials off camera whether they could use ultraviolet light, not bleach, internally to kill the COVID virus. And even then, it was a suggestion, not a recommendation. I mean, Trump sometimes misspeaks, but seriously, injecting bleach. And then Biden repeated the falsehood. Even Snopes ruled the accusation totally false. So give yourself 3 points if you believe Trump said to inject yourself with bleach. That's 3 points because then you believe the senile president. Okay, at number 16, Trump mocked a supposedly disabled reporter. Well, let's see. All right, I'll give you that one, but it is kind of funny. So the Duke University women's volleyball team visited Provo, Utah to play Brigham Young. Rachel Richardson, the only black player on the Duke team, claimed a fan or fans yelled racial slurs every time she served the ball. A fan was even banned from all future games. However, after an investigation, no such thing occurred. Why would Richardson lie? I don't know. Why would Bubba Wallace see a news? Anyway, give yourself a point for believing Richardson. At number 14, Biden's Build Back Better plan will pay for itself. Okay, anytime a Democrat, let alone Joey Softserve, saying any of their proposals will pay for itself, you know they're lying. Regardless, the Congressional Budget Office noted it would cost $1.7 trillion and bring in $1.3 trillion in revenue. That's a $400 billion difference with a B, and that is paying for itself to a Democrat. So give yourself 2 points if you believe this shit. And another 2 points if you think the so-called Inflation Reduction Act at number 13 would actually reduce inflation. That's being in Rube territory if you believe that line. At number 12, we have the Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer kidnap plot story. So the story goes that some militia group in Michigan planned to kidnap Whitmer and overthrow the state government. This was a conspiracy of like 12 people who were going to do this, except some of the conspirators were actually FBI agents or informants. A few accepted plea deals, and a few were found guilty of other crimes, but the whole thing smelled from the start. And if you believed it, then you also believe Maxine Waters when she says that there's white militias up in them thar hills of California or the woods of Michigan ready to take down the government. So give yourself 2 points for that craziness. At number 11, if you get the COVID jab, you won't get COVID. It's obviously false, since people who got the jab often mandate it. If you wanted to keep your job, they later got COVID. Did we say that? Wait a minute. We meant that if you got vaccinated and then developed COVID, the symptoms would not be worse. Oh, so if you believed a rushed into delivery vaccination would cure COVID, then you got to give yourself a point. Now for the top 10. And at number 10, Florida's so-called Don't Say Gay bill, which does not use the word gay or homosexual anywhere in it. What it does is it keeps gender ideology out of instruction in grades kindergarten through third grade and restricts it in all other grades so that it is age appropriate. And yes, this is from an actual book. It also requires parents are notified if the school provides any psychological counseling to a student. If you believe that schools should teach a child about homosexuality and transgenderism before they learn to read, do multiplication, or tie their own frickin' shoes, then give yourself 5 points. At number 9, so this is just fucking hilarious and comes from this chick, Cassidy Hutchinson, who had her 15 minutes of fame when she said that the president, Trump, tried to wrestle the wheel of the presidential car known as the Beast away from Secret Service agents and commandeer it to the Capitol on January 6, 2021. So close your eyes and just imagine that scenario. Yep, this dumb bitch was held up as the undoing of Trump with a story like this, even though the Secret Service said no such thing happened. If you believe the word of this lying sack of shit, give yourself 5 points. At number 8, do you remember Judy Monroe Layton? Well, of course you don't. She was the Jane Doe that sent a letter to this then Senator Kamala, the loser, alleging that this guy raped her in the back of a car. This letter supposedly supported the accusations against Kavanaugh by this hag, Christine Blasey Ford. Okay, first of all, that's just fucking ugly, okay? And if Kavanaugh did rape her or sexually assault her, which I seriously doubt, then he has no taste in women. Anyway, back to the other chick. She was a leftist activist from Kentucky who says she was just seeking attention. But if you believe either her or Ford, then you got to give yourself 5 points. I mean, come on, look at that. Ugh. Speaking of attention seekers, at number 7 is Jussie Smollett, an actor of dubious ability who just happens to be black. So he's in Chicago one cold winter's night and decides to walk to the local Subway to get a tuna sub and lemonade, whereupon he is accosted by people wearing these red MAGA hats. In fucking Chicago, of all places. And they yell racial and homophobic slurs at Smollett. Yeah, because he's intersectional, a gay black dude that nobody would notice on the street if he had a frickin' name tag on him. But these MAGA guys do notice him. Or maybe they were waiting for him. Anyway, and they just happened to have a makeshift noose to put around poor Jesse in the -5 cold streets of that center of the MAGA universe, Chicago. I mean, what the fuck? If you believe that from the get-go, then just give yourself 10 fucking points. I mean, come on. Moving on at number 6 and back to Trump. So there was this little kerfuffle in Charlottesville, Virginia, over a Robert E. Lee statue in a park, and there was some violence. So Trump made some comments condemning the racists and then noting that there were people on both sides of the issue, pro and con, who were not violent and probably very fine people. Yet this dipshit used that as a pretext, or so he says, to announce a run for the presidency and used that line of attack throughout his administration and then his ill-fated campaign. Biden even repeated the false claim during that ill-fated debate. Trump was not referring to the demonstration on the campus of the University of Virginia the night before, but about the demonstration in the park. And there were very fine people on both sides of that issue, which involved a fucking statue. And number 5, the Hunter laptop kerfuffle was Russian disinformation. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on this one other than to say that if you believe anything this guy says or puts his name to, then you're just hopeless. You just end it right there. At number 4, remember those George Floyd riots of 2020? The most lasting image of that summer of rage was this. Those mostly peaceful riots, an estimated cost of $1 to $2 billion in damage, When you throw in the related just general anti-Trump riots, add another $2.7 billion. But the Associated Press says they weren't riots, they were protests or movements. If you believe they were mostly peaceful, give yourself 3 points. And number 3, one would think this would be the granddaddy of them all, that Biden was the president and in command of his facilities, but even though there was this, and this, and this, it makes you wonder who really was the president for 4 years. Anyway, that's worth 5 points. And incidentally, I'm leaving the Trump-Russia collusion hoax off the list because it's just such blatant bullshit, even though some people still believe it. And number 2, back to COVID, which gave pangolins a bad name. Remember when people were saying it originated out of a Chinese virus lab in Wuhan? Remember this? The guy who poo-pooed away those suggestions. I'm not saying the Chinese deliberately leaked the damn thing, and maybe it was accidentally leaked, but if you think this, or this, or this caused an outbreak of COVID, then you get 10 points. And finally, at number 1, January 6, 2021 was an insurrection. All right, so this is a 10-pointer if you still believe it was an insurrection. Because as insurrections go, well, basically it gives insurrections a bad name. I mean, it certainly failed. It delayed a ceremonial vote for a few hours, and people not in the Capitol that day hid fearing they'd be raped or something. Because, honey, nobody wants their dick within 5 feet of you, okay? Seriously. Oh, look, here's a leader of the insurrection. Here's a believer. It was an insurrection. Oh, and another one. He likes to cry. So if you want to be in the company of these people and you really believe January 6th was an insurrection, then there's no hope for you. Incidentally, if you have at least 15 points, then you've fallen for dis or misinformation without knowing all the facts, or maybe, you're just mentally retarded. And that's it. Have a great day and a more pleasant tomorrow.